All right, welcome to the DIY Entrepreneurs. I'm so glad that you guys chose to join us for this topic of conversation around coaching versus counseling. Definitely thought that it was important to keep this discussion going. If you've listened to the last recording that we did, it was with the life coach, and he gave some very good information as far as knowing when you're at a crossroad or when you're at a difficult point in life, just kind of reaching out to people and knowing whether you need life coaching services or counseling services. And today I have a guest. She's a mental health nurse practitioner, and thought it was very important for her to come, have a chance to come on and just share more about the type of clients she sees, and also helping us to make a decision in when we're at that crossing the road, whether we need coaching or counseling. So help me to welcome Ms. Phoebe Williams. Thank you so much for joining us, Phoebe. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Isha, for having me. And I'll be happy to join and answer any question that you may have.
Thank you. I appreciate your availability. I know you be all over the coast. It's
Yes, I've been doing some traveling, girl. Yes.
I understand. We do have some prepared questions, but I wanted to make sure you guys had a background and just some insight into what Phoebe in her practice is doing. And so I want to give an introduction. She's a board certified mental health nurse practitioner. She's obtained her professional nurse practitioner degree from Walden University in 2018, but she's been in the health field for over 20 years. And I want to pause there and correct me if I'm wrong, and I can take this out if I'm wrong, but didn't you start as a CNA? Did you start as a CNA?
No, I actually started as a LPN, which is like a licensed practical nurse. Then
Yeah.
I did that only for a few months until I passed my RN board. And then once I passed my RN boards, I went straight into nursing. Been
Okay.
working in different area of nursing before I became a nurse practitioner.
Because I
Yeah, so I've
remember
been
seeing
around the
the
block a while.
I know when you said over for 20 years, because I remember seeing, I think I remember seeing an old ID, right? With like one of your first IDs.
Yeah, I started really young when my daughter was like, I think she was like 2 or 3 years old. Yes, yes.
So we're dealing with someone who has a wealth of knowledge in the mental health field. She's worked in several prestigious hospitals as a registered nurse, and now she's practicing in her own medical health practice for as a nurse practitioner. Her goal is to fight against the mental health stigma. And over the years, she's treated children and adults affected by various mental illnesses with care and compassion. And she also uses a evidence-based practice model when she's making her treatment choices. She specializes in treating ADHD, depression, anxiety, and mood instability. She offers psychiatric evaluation, medicating management, and CBT, all via telehealth. And so she's just really looking to promote mental health at an affordable cost. That's the big thing. And so thank you so much again, Phoebe, for joining us. Give me a little bit more information about your background. I know we've already talked to you coming up the ladder, but tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you said it all so far. Yes, I've been around, but I actually wanted to concentrate on mental health because um like you said, I've been doing other things before. Over the years, I was working in medical side, like I'll be working in intensive care unit, taking care of patients with hypertension, diabetes, all these other physical illness. But I always saw that mental health was so stigmatized to the
Mm,
point that people would be suffering in silence.
mm,
And everybody was more concentrating. If you have diabetes, everybody's like, you have diabetes. Everybody's like, oh, okay, you can take this. And if you say somebody, you know what, I feel so depressed, and they look at you like, oh, what's wrong with you? Get over it.
mm.
So people, because of that, people don't come forward to look for treatment. And a lot of time, that's why the suicide rate in this country is very high. I mean, not only in this country, worldwide, because people are not seeking treatment because they are so afraid of being judged, and when they cannot take it anymore, they just end it.
Yeah.
And so we really need to, you know, to be aware of this problem worldwide, mostly in America, so we could help people with mental health issues so they can feel more comfortable
Mhm.
seeking help.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll just share a little bit about me. The reason for me, just reaching out and sharing information about this is because I'm using myself as a case study. I shared about it a little bit in the other video, but right pre-pandemic, just getting out of a relationship and deciding a life, just change and journey. And then when the pandemic started, everything stopped. And of course, with the pandemic came other things. And so I was during that time doing a lot of self-evaluation using Google. And then it got to the point where I really had to reach out for some help. And you were one of the people that I was just asking some questions about. And so tell me, and I trusted you, one, because of your background, but also because you specialize in ADHD, depression, and anxiety. And those were the things that I was really kind of deciding between what was going on with myself. So tell me a little bit about the stigma around ADHD, anxiety, and those type of illnesses.
Okay. Well, it's just like I was saying, a lot of time people don't know what's wrong and they just don't feel right. They wake up in the morning, they feel like the chest is, their heart is beating fast. They just feel like the doom is on, it's like somebody explained to me how, and I actually know because I suffered a little bit of anxiety too before. So it's like somebody gave you bad news and then like, oh my God, there's a catastrophe, something bad happens, and then you just feel so scared. But in people that have anxiety, nothing happens. Everything is okay, and they feel that way. So it's like the fight and flight mode is always on for no reason, and that's not a good feeling. Yeah, and then so if you feel like that, then I would like to educate people that it's not normal. If you don't want to talk to a mental health provider right away, you can even discuss that to your medical doctor and they can point you to the right direction. As far ADHD in this country, we have about.
Well, I like to just ask a little bit. You said is the fight or flight? What was that term?
Fight or flight response.
They say more about the fight or flight. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Like when you feel scared, like totally scared, like something is happening. Like if you see a ghost, what you gonna do? You're gonna run. You're gonna be and then your feelings is all messed up. You're like you want to run away, and you don't feel right. You don't want to be there. So anxiety make you feel the same way, like you saw a ghost, but you didn't. So it's like it just keep happening. So it's because the norepinephrine, the dopamine, and all these chemicals, especially the epinephrine that makes your heart like keep dripping. It's that's why I call it a disorder. It's not right. Yeah. And then we have medication that can help with that.
Is that the chemical imbalance?
Yes, and that's it is. Yeah. So we're not gonna go into chemical imbalance right now because that's a whole different show.
Gotcha.
Because there's a lot of explanation that I would have to explain what chemical and how to do it and how to get that balance. But what I really would like people to know is like there's treatment out there. We have SSRIs, things like that can fix these chemicals. But before we even go into the chemical fixing, which is the medication part, we still need to find out what is going on in this person's life because not everybody needs medication.
I like that you said that.
Not everybody needs medication, yes.
And so what's that part of figuring, is that the coaching part? The part of figuring out the assessment?
It's the therapy. The first thing, is the evaluation. Because once a lot of time my clients come in to me and with all these symptoms and they don't know what's going on. They just don't feel right. And finally the medical doctor would say, I think you need to see a mental health provider. And they'll come in and the first thing I would say is like, what is going on? going on with you that makes you feel this kind of way. And a lot of time they'll say, well, you know what, I just broke up with my boyfriend, or just found out my husband cheated on me, I may be having a divorce. And I'll be like, okay, I'll take note of that. And I said, well, before all this, were you okay? They'll be like, oh yeah, before that I was fine, I mean, I was having fun. Then that's when I would just be, you know what, let's just go into some counseling, into what, let's just solve your problem. And that would be the coaching part. But I'm not a life coach. I'm mostly, therapy include life coach, but I think life coach will be just, I think it's just direct. Like a life coach would just say, well, girl, you need to just leave this person, and, do it, that, they just give you solutions right away. As opposed to counseling. And what I do, I would be like, going forward, like, what's your childhood like, what was happening, I kind of guide the person to find their own solution with my guidance. Yes.
Good. And I like that you said that about the coaching is the more results driven.
Yeah,
and that's what we
you need to do
about.
this. They'll tell you what to do in counseling and mental health. What I do in my field, we don't tell patients or clients what to do. We guide you. And then before you know it, by the time we're done with you, you already know what to do. You're going to do it all by yourself.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was three things. One, before I started my whole internet search, I thought that a therapist and a mental health professional like yourself was one and the same thing. And I knew what a life coach was. And so when you put all of those together, sometimes if it's so much going on in our lives, we really have to sit down and speak to someone and say, am I at a point where I need life coaching, whether I need someone to just kind of push me onto this project that I'm doing, or am I at a point where I need to sit down and talk to someone, which I understand will be the therapist, right? You're sitting down and you're talking out your emotions. You're talking out, the things that has happened to you. And then it gets to the point where that therapist is like, okay, there's something deeper, or there's something else that's going on.
Exactly.
And I need to refer you then to who would be yourself, a mental health professional, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so then that's the difference between, I think the title of the show is life coaching
versus counseling.
Yeah, there's a little, they all have this, have the same result at the end of the day, but they're all different because the life coach cannot diagnose you.
Exactly.
Cannot tell you, you know what, but in order for us to diagnose you, we need to go back into when you were a child. When I do a psych eval on someone, I start the minute that you were born to the minute you're sitting right on my chair. What's going on? Yeah.
And so tell us more. I know you talked about ADHD. What about depression? I mean, you talked about anxiety, right?
What we already
depression and ADHD.
Okay, so depression and anxiety usually they're like twin sisters or twin brothers. One doesn't go without the other. It's like it's kind of, and that's probably from research point of view. That's why the medication that treat depression also treat anxiety. Because it's almost like the same. The thing is, when you start feeling the way I was telling you, you feel scared all the time. You have palpitation. You don't feel right. Of course, you're gonna be, that affect your feelings because you don't know what's going on, and then all of a sudden you're depressed. You're like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on with me, and it's just all this. It's basically depression will be, and when you start having these anxiety attacks, and then you don't know what's going on, you're just so confused about it. Before you know it, you don't want to get out of the bed. Your mood is sad. You don't want to even do your hair anymore. You don't want to, somebody invites you to the movies, you be like, nah, that's okay. I think I'll just lay down. And then, your appetite is lacking now. You don't want to eat, and you don't want to, you're not sleeping right. And that's depression. You either oversleep all the time. You just lay on the couch and sleep, or you can't sleep because you're thinking. So it's either or. And you can eat a lot because you're eating your feelings, like take it on food, and that's why a lot of people with depression end up gaining weight.
Mm.
Or you could just don't even want to see food.
Yeah.
So it's just a mess. But it usually start with anxiety first.
Okay.
From my experience, when I do my psych eval, patient would tell me the anxiety started first and then goes into depression.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and it's the same medication? Is this the same type of assessment diagnosis with the anxiety and depression? Okay.
Yeah. So we know from when you do your psych eval with either a psychiatrist or / mental health practitioner like myself or a therapist, they will be able to tell you exactly what's going on with you as far as whether it's just anxiety or the anxiety led to depression. Because a lot of time the anxiety didn't become depression yet, especially if the person get help right away. We can just treat you for anxiety and then before it turns into something else,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And now what about ADHD?
ADHD it usually starts in childhood, believe it or not. It's a childhood disease. But let me just take out the word disease. It's not, condition. Let's just say condition.
Okay.
It starts in childhood, but the reason why we have so many adults with ADHD is because it went untreated from childhood, whether the parents didn't believe in mental health, they didn't want to take their child to see a psychiatrist. Like, oh no, I'm not going to put this stigma on my child. And I don't want my neighbor to know my child is taking medication. Oh no, there's nothing wrong with my child. And then they were just not having that child treated. The ADHD people are very smart, even though they can't sit still, they can't focus, but they're very smart. So they struggle, a lot of ADHD adults, they struggle with it, and they still graduate from high school. But a lot of them didn't graduate from high school because they just drop out because they're having so much problem with grades and all these other things. And then other situation where parents wouldn't, I just discussed, like, parents don't want to bring their children to mental health because of the stigma. A lot of the time, the parents don't know at all. They just look at the child and say, she or he is such a bad child. And they keep spanking that child, abuse that child. I have a lot of adults that comes for evaluating ADHD. They'll say, oh my God, my mom used to tie me down in the bed or tie me in the chair because I wouldn't sit still. And I feel so bad. I'm like, oh my God, I would get so much spanking. They told me that I was a bad child, that I wouldn't listen. They told me to sit in one chair. In one place. I would not be able to sit. I would just jumping all over the place, and then I would get into everybody's business, and I would get punished. Yes, that's the common story I hear from people that have ADHD. So yeah, and then another thing, ADHD is a piece on its own. It just because like there's a huge population, a huge percentage of ADHD people who turn into drugs. And the drug of choice would be crystal meth, because the crystal meth has the same chemical as Adderall and Ritalin that actually treat ADHD. So if they are lucky or unlucky enough, a friend or somebody would have them taste a little crystal meth, and all of a sudden they can't focus. All of a sudden, that's still there. All of a sudden they're like, oh my God, this is good. So they get hooked up on it, but it's the wrong choice because the crystal meth is gonna kill you or making you sick. And at the time, that's by the time they get in a lot of trouble with being addicted to crystal meth. And that's when they would finally, in the hospital, somebody would say, let me give you an ADHD test. Let me test you for ADHD. And that's where they'll be like, oh yeah, this, yeah. They'll check every box. And then we're like, oh my God, this is the reason why you're addicted to crystal meth. Now we're going to put you on the right treatment. Now we're going to, help you. So, yeah.
Okay. And so now what are some of those that I get it, the ADHD, that's on a whole different spectrum as the anxiety and depression, but this is one of your areas that you are specialized in.
Yeah.
And so these are some of the things. Okay, as an adult, what does adult ADHD look like?
It's basically just like the children, but
Okay.
except for the kid, for adults can manage it, can try to manage it better because they're grown now.
Yeah.
They know better. The kids would just get in trouble, getting spanking, like I was telling you. But an adult ADHD wouldn't be getting in that much trouble. Like I said, the trouble that they get into is getting into the drug thing that I just explained to you. But what they will be, it's the same symptom. They can't focus. They start doing the work and they just leave it and do something else. And they're, oh my God, I needed to finish this. They forget their appointments. They very forgetful. Their inattention is so bad to the point that it will take them longer to finish their tasks as other people. A lot of ADHD adults will tell me, oh yeah, I got fired, for my job because I couldn't, I couldn't stick to my task. And then, my boss would give me an assignment and I just couldn't finish it. I just, I don't know what's going on with me. And that's and there's a lot of ADHD people that are also become depressed and anxious because of that reason. Okay. They're like, oh my, they feel, they feel like a failure. Yeah. And so, lack of attention, lack of focus, forgetfulness, not able to sit still. Like right now, an ADHD person wouldn't be sitting like me and you. So we know we don't have ADHD because they'll be like, you know what? Are you done yet? I need to go.
Like, okay, wrap it up. I am like this. I'd be like, okay, come on, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. We'll see.
But okay. And I know that you have a practice now. In your practice, are you treating, is it out that these are the 3 things that you help to manage?
No, I manage all of it. Like, okay. I can manage schizophrenia and bipolar and, but believe it or not, and actually it's really, when you study these things, you're like, oh my God, everything that's in the book, it is true. The people that wrote those books, they know. So there's a huge population of ADHD, like 5% of the American population. 5%, that's a lot. That's like over 8 million people, and that's worldwide that have ADHD. So that's more widespread. Depression also is very widespread. I think it's 3 to 4%. I mean, don't quote me. I mean, I'm just like approximately. Schizophrenia, actually, which is the most severe mental illness, is only 1 to 2%. Thank God for that. Okay. Yes. And then bipolar is also a big one. I think bipolar is about 3 to 4% as well as of the population. And yeah, so I have a lot of clients that have bipolar. That's another one that's very widespread also, that people don't know what's going on with bipolar. I know we didn't mention it, but bipolar is basically a depression, but it's a 2-pole depression. It's like a 2-pole. One pole where you depressed, like I was telling you, depressed, sad, don't want to do anything. And then out of nowhere, you're like, oops, you have this high energy where you dress up and you want to have a drink and you want to have a party and you're talking to you'll be like, hey, what's up? Hey, Pete. You'll be calling your friends and talking all night. And the friends are, what's wrong with you? You just become a first. Oh yeah, I'm so happy today. And they're like, and they don't want to eat because they have all this energy. They don't want to sleep. They could go days without sleeping because they have all this energy. They want to do this. They want to be in the computer. They want to shop. They want to do, some of them take the car for a joyride. They can trouble speed. And then that will go on for either 1, 2, 3, 4 days, sometimes longer. And then they crash back into, I don't want to do anything. I want to die. And that goes back and forth into their life. And it's just devastating.
Now,
Yeah,
is
bipolar.
bipolar I'm sorry, is bipolar something that it starts out in childhood like ADHD?
No,
Was
no,
okay.
you could end up having bipolar anytime in your
Okay.
life. Yes, and it's highly genetic. Like if your mom, dad, parents, cousins have bipolar, mm, you are at risk for it. It's highly genetic. We do
Mhm.
not understand, every reason why people have mental illness, but it's highly related to early childhood negative experience
Gotcha. Okay.
where some kids were abandoned,
Yeah.
foster,
Come from childhood
abused,
traumas.
trauma, and the other side is when your parents had a mental illness, genetic. So
Mhm. And a
yeah.
lot of that, I think back, if thinking about my parents, a lot of that wasn't probably documented. A lot of it wasn't probably known. And so completing an assessment, I can't even tell you if my grandmother, my mom's mother, had bipolar. I don't know what mental illnesses they had. And so now it's like this generation, now that we're getting more aware of the mental health, now we can start more documentation for the generations that's coming after us, so that we can say, well, this is what some of the conditions that your grandma had. And so I think that's one of the great things that's happening with the awareness of mental health and things like that. And I know we're wrapping up, but one thing, what did you see across those four things? What was the most increase during a pandemic? Like some, before pandemic, you had a lot of these, but then pandemic is skyrocket. So what were some of those illnesses that you saw a lot of?
Anxiety was the
Yeah.
the main. I mean, I've never treated so many anxiety cases,
Mm,
starting with the pandemic, and mostly the anxiety was more widespread, more than all the other illness that we mentioned, because even people that had the other mental illness, but they were feeling more of the anxiety, and so that was the complaint that they come with mostly. And then just to also educate the public about the depression and the bipolar. The depression, okay, bipolar is a depression, that's what it is, but it's a two-pole depression. That's why they'll honor the name for, it's like unipolar, unipolar, which is only one pole depression, where you depress all the time, or you're anxious and depressed all the time. And then the two poles, it's like when you leave the depression at one time and you go into that distinct period of high energy. And so that's why they call it two-pole, bipolar. And the treatment for it is very, very different. So people, the public need to understand that it's kind of tricky too, because if you are bipolar and they're treating you with only the antidepressant, then your case can become worse. You can, your symptoms, you could end up with mania, which is, we don't have time to go into that. But so the antidepressants treat depression, but bipolar is treated with a mood stabilizer, which is different than an antidepressant.
And is that, I know when we read about what you do, the medical management, and is that some of the things that you're taking into consideration when someone comes to you and say, you're taking all of those things? Okay. And so what does it look like for someone to start to come to you? What do I have to have done? Is there anything that I have had to have done before I approach you for an assessment, knowing that you are, the nurse practitioner, that medical, that can assign treatment and things like that? What's my first step in wanting to get more information about something about my mental illness from you?
Okay, so the first thing is to understand something is happening with you, because the treatment start with the individual by making the commitment, by knowing something is not right, because a lot of people are very in denial in every situation. They don't know what's going on. The family is telling them something is wrong, or the friends, the boyfriend, their husbands, and then they don't know. They're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm just having a bad day every day. a bad day every day, you know,
Mhm.
they don't know, and they will never seek my help or anybody else's help.
Right.
Voice help. So the first thing is for you to know, yeah, you know what, I think I need to talk to somebody. And then,
That's
you
good.
know, you find out about me online, or, you know, my website is www.pwpsychservices.com. So if you happen to find me, first thing is to reach out to me or to anybody else that you find online. And then when you reach out to me or the person, they will send you an evaluation. You could actually start knowing what's going on with you before you even see me, because then I'll send you like a form, you
Mhm.
know, like, you know, just, you know, test you for ADHD. Even before you see me, I already test you for ADHD. It's called ADHD self-report. Um,
Okay.
Anxiety, depression. I sent you those forms, and then when you fill them out, you send them back to me, and I looked at it. I'm like, okay, now let's talk, you know, set you for an appointment, and then we go from there.
Okay. Okay, good. And you said your website was www.pw
Yeah,
Psych Service.
yeah, sorry, too many W's now. It's only three W's. www.pwpsychservices.com. And psych, it's, even though it's pronounced with the S, but it's spelled P-S-Y-C-H, like psychiatry.
Mm,
P-S-Y-C-H. I know it's a long name, but it's really easy. It's like,
yeah.
it's www.pwpsychservices.com.
Yeah, and I'm going to have it across the screen as well to help them out. And we're going to have a link as well down below so that you guys could check her out on her website and initiate the process, because it has to start with you. Like she said, initiate the process, and then she'll send you the assessment to go from there. Again, thank you so much for your time, Phoebe. And of course, her website is PW, that's Phoebe William. So PW
Yes,
Psych
PW
Services.
Psych Service. Or they could always call me too. The number is 888 516 0397.
Great, great. And is that they will leave a message?
They can leave a message. They can even text me. That's the beauty of it. And that's one thing I offer to my patients. They have this privilege of just texting me back and forth.
Good stuff. Now, do you have any social media platforms we can
Yes, I'm
follow
also
on?
I'm on Facebook, of course. They'll have to type PW Psych Services. They'll find me I'm on Facebook, and I'm going toward Instagram soon, which
Good, good.
yeah, I'm still working on this social media thing.
It's all right. It's all right. That's what most of us do with all of our experience and background. So again, thank you so much, Phoebe, for joining us and giving us all the information. All the information and the links will be below for her services. And thank you guys again for joining us and chatting with us to the end. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you.